Okay, so we know that it's going to have this form because you have a c squared and a d squared. So if you have a c, d, c, and a d, it's going to be c minus 4d and c plus 11d. All right, any questions on that?
Like which one to put first? I know you can use will second, but whether you do -4 first or -4 last.
Oh, it doesn't matter which one. If you wanted to write it as c plus 11d and c minus 4d, you could do that also. Kind of like 2 times 4 and 4 times 2. You can switch them up. All right. Any other questions on this one? All right. Okay, so let's say if we want to factor x squared plus 27xy minus 58y squared. Okay.
Any chance going to show the other method, or are you just going to stick with the like factoring it and figure out? I can't remember what it. I can't remember what it was called, but it's you multiply and then you do something else to figure it out, where you don't have to like factor all of them.
Oh, I know which method
The
you're
C
talking
method?
about. The A times C method?
Yeah.
Yep, we're going to do that too.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, so we know that we have a x squared and a y squared in the first and last term. Uh-oh. Okay, so since we have, what? I'm so determined to put an H in there for some reason. So since we have x squared in the first term, and we also have a y squared in the last term, our answer will look like this, where you'll have x and some value in there y, and x, it'll be plus or minus some value times y. Okay, so we know that x squared plus 27xy minus 58y squared, our b is equal to 27, and our c is equal to negative 58. Okay, so ones like this, they don't normally jump out at me as far as to which one would make both of them true, because we have to find two numbers that multiply to equal negative 58 and two numbers that add to equal 27. Okay. The only thing we do know is that if we multiply them together and it's negative, one has to be positive and one has to be negative. So that kind of cuts back how many problems we have to throw in there. And if they add together, it's going to be positive, so the bigger number would have to be positive. Okay, so we have our factor of 58, and we have the sum of the factors. Okay, so we know that the larger number would have to be positive, so we have negative 1 times 58, where if we add them together, we'll just have positive 57, because if we tried 1 and negative 57, it would be negative 58 would be negative 57, so we don't have to worry about doing that one since we're looking for a positive. Okay, so what about 2 and 29? Okay, so you have 2 and negative 29, where if you add, well, should have been the other way around. So negative 2 and positive 29, where if you add them together, you end up with positive 27. Okay, so this is the one we're going to use. So you have negative 2 and 29, negative 2 and 29. So this is going to factor into, remember, it has to be in that form, since you have a squared in both of them. So you have x, y, x, y. So it's x minus 2y and x plus 29y. Let me move that y over a little bit. Make that look clear. All right, so that would be your answer. Any questions on that one? All right. So we'll do one more example, then we'll move on to the next part. We want to factor u squared minus 25uv plus 46v squared. And I'll let you start on this one. Remember, at least one of your factors will have to be negative. Bless you.
Thank you.
All right, so we already know because you have the u squared and the v squared, it will have the form of u v and u v. We just have to figure out what sign you're going to have and what's going to be in front of the v. Okay, so you have u squared minus 25 uv plus 46 v squared. We know our b is equal to negative 25, and our c is equal to 46. Okay, so we have to find two numbers that multiply to equal 46. And those same two numbers have to add to equal negative 25. Okay, so if we look at our factors of 46 and the sum of the factors, okay, so we know that this is positive, so that means both of them will have to be negative because we multiply them together, they have to be positive. Okay, so if we have negative 1 and 46, since 1 times 46, so negative 1, negative 46. If you add them together, you get negative 47, so that's not it. Okay, so you have 2 times 23. Negative 2 times negative 23. That actually gives you negative 25. So that's the one we're going to use. Okay, so you have negative 2, negative 23, negative 2, and negative 23. Or you can have negative 23 and negative 2. Doesn't matter which order you put them in. That means this, remember, it's going to be in the form of u, v, and u, and v. We just know it's going to be minus 2v and minus 23v. Okay, so any questions on that one? No, all right. Okay, so now we're going to factor if you have something in front of the a that's not equal to 1. Oh, anyone's still writing? I think everyone's done writing. Oh, can't do the example yet till I... So we're factoring. Trinomials in the form ax squared plus bx plus c, where we know that a does not equal 1. Okay. And this is the a times c method. Okay. So the first thing you're going to do is factor out the greatest common factor if there is one. Because a lot of times if you factor out the greatest common method, you can avoid this step and just use the step we used before, which is a lot easier. So if possible, factor out the greatest common factor. Okay. So step 2, you want to find two numbers that multiply to equal A times C. And add together to equal your B. Okay. Now once you do that, your third step is whatever your B times X is in the middle, you're going to replace it with the two values from step 2. So replace whatever your BX is in your original trinomial with the two values from step 2. Then once you do that, you'll now have 4 terms, and you can use factor by grouping. Oops, I see a few people writing. All right. So let's say, for example, we wanted to factor 8x squared minus 14x plus 5. Okay, so we can see it's in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you want to see if you can factor out anything from all the terms. You can't factor anything out from all 3 terms, so there's no greatest common factor. Okay, now for the second step, 8x squared minus 14x plus 5. Here, your a is equal to 8. Your b is equal to negative 14. And your c is equal to 5. So you have to find 2 numbers that multiply to equal whatever your a times c is, and 2 numbers that add to equal b. Okay, so we know that, move that over there, since we know that a times c is equal to 8 times 5, which is equal to 40, we have to find 2 numbers that multiply to equal 40 and 2 numbers that add to equal negative 14. Okay. So with this one, negative 4 and 10 works. Negative 4 and negative 10 works. So we have negative 4 and negative 10. Negative 4 and negative 10. Okay, so we found our 2 values. Okay, Now, because you have that 8 in front of the x squared, you can't just plug them in like you did before. This is where the third step comes in. You're going to replace your b of x, so in this case is negative 14x, with those two values. Uh-oh. Step 2. Okay, so that means where we had 8x squared minus 14x plus 5, that becomes 8x squared, and it doesn't matter which one you put first, because it'll work either way, minus 4x minus 10x plus 5. Okay, so all you do is replace negative 14x with negative 14x. Just a stretched out version of it. Okay, and now we do factor by grouping. Oh, don't even have to put steps. I already have just the other ones written out differently. So the fourth step. Factor by grouping. Okay. Move that up just a little. So remember, factor by grouping, 8x squared minus 4x minus 10x plus 5. The first step for factoring by grouping is you want to make your subgroups. Okay, and then you factor both of those subgroups. So for this one, you can factor 4x out of both. So you have 4x so 4x times 2x will give us 8x squared, so we know our 2x goes here. And 4x times negative 1 will give us negative 4x. Okay, so we have that there. Here, you can factor out a negative 5 from both of those. Because this is a plus, we need that to be a minus to match it. So if we factor out a negative 5, that will leave us with negative 5 times 2x will give us 10x. And negative 5 times negative 1 will give us positive 5. Okay, let me move that up just a little bit more. There we go. Okay. So we have what we need, our matching binomials. That means we can go ahead and just yes.
When you're grouping, do you include the negative sign with the 10, or do you leave that outside?
Oh, yep, that would be part of the 10. All right, so we go ahead and bring that out to the front. So we have 2x minus 1. And you can go ahead and cross those out if you want to. You don't have to. And everything that's left goes into the other parentheses. So you have 4x minus 5.
Can you screen it up?
Oh, sure. There you go. Okay, so any questions on that one? All right, I'll leave that up for a few more seconds.
I actually got a question.
Sure.
Okay, so after you cross the 2x out,
Mm-hmm.
how'd you get the 2x minus 1? I'm just trying to make sure I understand.
Okay. You said it
Okay,
after I cross the 2x minus 1 out?
yes.
Okay. So whatever, after you factor out the 2x minus 1, then whatever's left after you factor out goes into the other parentheses.
Okay.
All right. So it's kind of like if you had 4xy minus 5y, and you factor the y out of both of those, whatever's left would go into the other one. So in this case, you just happen to factor out another polynomial. So that would just be 4x minus 5. Does that make sense?
So, yeah.
Okay. All right, so what if we have the factor, say 2x squared plus 13x plus 6. Let me clean that up a little bit. All right, so you can see here that we can't factor out the greatest common factor, so that won't help us out. Okay, so now we have to use the A times C method. 2x squared plus 13x plus 6, which means that A is equal to 2, B is equal to 13, and C is equal to 6. Which means that A times C is equal to 2 times 6, which is 12. So we have to find two numbers that multiply equal 12, and those same two numbers add to equal 13. Okay, so they only differ by 1, so those are pretty easy to do. You can use 12 and 1. So 12 times 1 is 12, and 12 plus 1 is 13. So when they only differ by 1, you know a 1's in there somewhere. Okay, so now we go to our third step, where we're going to replace our b times x, which in this case is our 13x. So we replace 13x with the step 2 values. Okay, so that means where we started off with 2x squared plus 13x plus 6 will now become, running out of pencil lead there. There we go. 2x squared plus 12x plus 1x. Or you can use 1x and 12x. You'll get the same answer either way. Plus 6. Okay. And then from there we just factor by grouping. Okay, let me move this up a little bit. Okay, so that means we have our 2x squared plus 12x. You don't have to put the 1x if you don't want to. Okay, and then you factor each subgroup. So you can factor a 2x out of both of those. Okay, so 2x times x will give us 2x squared. And 2x times 6 will give us 12x. Plus, you can only factor a 1 out of both of those since they don't have